All right. So Mike Cornwell basically called me up earlier, said, "Hey man, you got to take a look into this." And I thought, "Hey, I think you're right. I do need to talk about this. How do I make the whole QNT connection for you guys without getting myself in too much trouble?" Well, we'll get into that here in a bit as well. So, mainstream news reported earlier today, 2:06 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only about roughly 4.5 hours ago. JP Morgan goes live with first blockchain-based collateral settlement. He takes me and also Rich, Common Sense Crypto. Utility in motion. I guess that's a thing I say a lot. But why do I say that? Because, we could talk about partnerships all day. We could talk about what's going on with this company, that company. And we know for a fact that it doesn't necessarily pump the price. Sometimes it does. But, partnerships complement things like with blockchain projects and so on. It doesn't necessarily pump the price. It's not really utility in motion. So Mike says this is utility in motion. So what is this all about? Well, we do cite CoinDesk quite often, and here's one of the key things for you tonight as a person from the audience tuning in. Again, please smash that like. This is big news, whether you hold Quant or not. Now, you may be thinking, nothing here mentions Quant. Hey, I get that. We're going to get into some of that here in a bit. But what I want to show you is this. CoinDesk reports first mover of America's JP Morgan, of course, went live with first blockchain-based collateral settlement. The latest price moves in crypto markets in context for October 11th. Again, it was cited earlier today, but you have to keep in mind that they carried out, as in JP Morgan, its first live blockchain-based collateral. And basically speaking, like what it says is JP Morgan's Ethereum-based Onyx blockchain and the bank's tokenized collateral network, which is TCN, was in fact used by BlackRock. And listen to this. This is going to be a great segue of everything that we've been talking about for the longest time. And I also want to state this. It's never financial advice, but if you've been following the old and even the news station for the longest time on our coverage for over a year talking about some of this stuff, you may be tempted to FOMO, but also recognize that the market is kind of tanking back. So again, draw your own conclusion. Do you DCA a little bit? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Make your own decision what's for best for you and your family and so on. But it goes into this detail about collateralization. And it talks about, again, a little bit more tokenizing shares, kind of like what Larry Fink was talking about. But the tokens in this regard were transferred to Barclays PLC for collateral in an OTC over-the-counter derivatives trade. The tokenization of traditional financial assets, of course, is a big deal for banks. And it's an area JP Morgan has been leading the charge with, now joined by the likes of Citi and others. Now, if you were watching yesterday's show, I went into quite an elaborative deep dive in regards to QNT and the Citi connection, even reaffirming the partnership and even giving you proof, in my opinion. Maybe it's not solid enough for you because you're a naysayer. You'll never get it, even if it's right in your face, but that's okay. And that is the connection with Citi and literally the interview from CoinDesk of a particular lady who you could totally tell she can't come out with full disclosure, right? But basically, she mentions Quant, right? So if you missed that, you can go back and watch that. That video was chopped up and released earlier this morning. I would highly recommend you taking a look into that video for you could tie it in to where we're at today. Now, jumping into this CoinDesk piece. Coinbase is, of course, legal fighter. The status of the crypto met, of course, a new hurdle yesterday as U.S. state authorities and legal experts joined a campaign by federal securities regulators to argue the company's unlawfully operated and unregistered exchange. Now, we already been there. We already done that. And my thing is this, especially with Coinbase listing XRP, is there's a big shift now going into some of these other things. Yes. And that's why another reason why I want to bring this to your attention. So the SEC, of course, had action against one of the country's biggest crypto exchanges, as in Coinbase, and has been seen as the existential reason for the crypto future of the world, right? With the sector accusing the SEC of regulating by enforcement in the absence of new laws, especially here in the United States. Now, there are new amicus briefs, and they basically allow parties who are interested but not directly affected by the case to aid the court's reasoning. And of course, they argue that crypto in itself is neither significant nor special, and the SEC can't take on digital assets under, of course, existing law. So I thought I'd show you that. We talked about, of course, this thing about Caroline Ellison. I don't want to get into that. The thing I want to mainly get back into is this right here. And this part is from Quant Qnt in regards to research. Now, this is public research. So again, Quant Qnt, please don't get too upset about this because this is public, right? Capital markets, digital assets, JP Morgan, Onyx team's remit is to blow it up to disrupt. Now, again, we're in October. When was this cited? This was only a few months ago. Getting more into this, you do see some key things here. And basically speaking, it talks about disruption, talks about regulated institutions. Your key takeaway from this particular one should be about how one industry is disrupting another. We always talk about that. We even talk about when it comes to JASMY, right? But for this particular coverage tonight, its focus is what's going on in regards to JP Morgan and bringing in even in that whole thing about the Quant connection. It says at Point Zero Forum 6 weeks ago, or actually way more than that now because this was back in August, were you aware that executives, basically speaking, did form the traditional finance, digital asset sector type thing of 6 digital exchanges, SBI, you name it, JP Morgan, and they discussed the challenges for institutions in the next generation of financial infrastructure. We talk about Web3 and that new infrastructure. What exactly is that? So on the surface, from the risk manager's side of things, this guy, David Nunes, who's the CEO of 6 digital exchange, SDX, compared TradeFi to, for example, NASA. This sounds crazy because we're always talking about when moon, right? Yeah, shout out to Ahmed. But NASA in its latest SLS rocket, which does have this whole thing of costing billions every time it launches. That's insane, right? Billions every time it launches. It's unacceptable for it to explode on the launch pad and has a reputational risk for NASA. In contrast, when you look at SpaceX, Starship One is the move fast and break things camp, and Musk is happy simply if he gets off the pad or takes the pencil and lands it back down on the beam. Now, the point and analogy they're trying to make here is what you're about to see right here. And that is, while people are losing billions of dollars in an experimental DeFi world owing to smart contract vulnerabilities, and again, think about the coverage we just shared a couple days ago with Quant and the whole thing of smart audits, right? Don't forget about that. In TradeFi, it is unacceptable to lose a single token. Never mind thousands or even millions in a regulated environment. Quote, look at this. It has to work the first time and every time, and hence scalability. I have to have the same user experience as you and everybody else. Now, SBI, we talk about SBI a lot. It states that from this guy who's the CEO, Fernando Luis Vasquez Chao, spoke about the public blockchain in regards to JP Morgan and the DeFi trials that were conducted, of course, with Onyx, right, with JP Morgan. In this old piece from a couple months ago, it goes on to state some of these details that in regards to Onyx, only took a few weeks to do the technical work. But the legal side took 9 months to get the approval from the risk and compliance departments and regulators in 3 countries. This is why you don't necessarily get a quick flip of the switch. There's got to be that full implementation. I want people to understand that. So, you know, there's this whole thing about, will TradeFi replicate current processes? I think the answer is yes. I'm not going to get into all that. Disrupt yourself or be disrupted. I will get into this because we have talked about remit. And in the past, we talked about Onyx. So the point I want to share with you is this. Back to the topic of, you know, aggressively disrupting some of these industries that need to be disrupted. The remit for his team at Onyx is to blow up the whole thing, you know, in the matter in which you're compliant with regulation. And he says not just because JP Morgan wants to disrupt itself for fun, but it's because there is an awareness that if it does nothing, and this is a great point, it will be disrupted by the likes of startups such as Signum and you name it, right? They recognize that they don't want to be like, for instance, like AOL, right? They're going to get left in the dust if they don't take advantage of getting in with innovation. You know, you do eventually have to join the new technologies of the world, or you won't exist anymore. Apart from disruption, there's of course a thing of endurance, but I'm not going to get into all of these specific things. This last part, before we get into my key outline for the Q&A connection, is just that tokenization. I've been talking about it for a few months now. If you guys notice, every single week I put a lot of focus on what? Tokenization, and why it's a big deal, and why it's a big deal to you, even if you're not a QNT holder. And even if you're the type of guy, you're like, it's just an ERC20 token, and you've never done your proper research to realize it's so much more than an ERC20 token. And it's this part right here, plain as day. Tokenization and interoperability. Were you aware that 5 years ago, there was this whole thing of an expectation that enterprise blockchain networks could be shared? Today, there are numerous bond issuance platforms, each on separate networks. This part also references Gilbert Verdian quite often. One thing's for sure, the current state of walled garden, think about how many times he stated that, Gilbert Verdian, that walled garden DLT networks is not sustainable. Look at this quote. In 10 years, if we don't have interoperability, we failed, says SDX's Nunes. We add that these digital assets initiatives won't exist in 10 years without just that, interoperability. Now, there's not just one kind of interoperability, and some people feel as though there is. You know, Max Way puts so much emphasis on interoperability. We've seen cases of even with the XRP ledger, David Schwartz saying interoperability through the likes of Flare. And we gave you that explanation and that breakdown the other day that while Flare seems very similar to Quant, it is not exactly the same. You know, it provides a solution to existing blockchains by allowing them to basically create smart contracts, right? Which is a great thing, but basically for platforms that just don't have it. Okay. But what about the whole thing of interoperability with 100 plus blockchains? Okay. What about interoperability from the point where you have even the banking sectors that might not exactly have a public token? Enter in what we're talking about tonight. So both IMF and the Bank of International Settlements have started to discuss orchestrating this type of interoperability. Hence, again, why we're referencing Quant. A week before this event, the BIS promoted its concept of the unified ledger. And that is basically to enable TradeFi blockchains to interoperate with, and provide central bank digital currency CBDCs for settlement. And, we're always talking about real-time gross settlements. So what about being able to have oh crap moments where a network goes down completely? Again, we give you the example of if that was to happen, especially with Ethereum, that with Quant's Overledger, you can quickly switch to any particular blockchain through Overledger and do just that. Settle in RTGS with finality on a particular different one, whether it's the XRP Ledger, XDC, Stellar, and some of the other ones. Is pretty amazing. Now back to this whole thing about JP Morgan, because this is hot in the news. Farouk observed that in the past, in regards to JP Morgan, things were built as a public good, pointing to the example of the internet, whereas today it's more of a race. And here's a great quote before we get into the segue of the coverage tonight, tying in QNT. If you try to wait for interoperability, you might lose the race. Either we'll converge to some sort of public mechanism which wins out, he said, or we'll have to bite the bullet, and at a global level, some organizations, regulators, or otherwise will need to come together and really think about it. They already prepared for this. So how have they prepared for it? Well, let's introduce this. And this is a video. It's only 3.5 minutes. And it's from Global City. It's in regards to their vision of economic growth, a roadmap to prosperity. And maybe you wonder, why am I sharing this? Well, for one, you do need a little break. You need a little visualization. But this was published only about a month ago, literally as of tomorrow. And it is in regards to that roadmap for prosperity that was published by the City of London Corporation in partnership with Oliver Wyman. And it proposes a package of reforms and measures that could add $225 billion to the UK's economy. This roadmap, also co-authored by leading industry experts from Lloyd's, Schroders, JP Morgan, EY, KPMG, yeah, eat it, you know who, I'm not going to mention his name, Barclays, Glasswell, and Sipple. It offers concrete recommendations and outlines tangible economic advantages, or, from that regard. In regards to the UK financial and professional services, sustainable finance, and even tech and data-driven, because we're always talking about tech and data-driven industries, while enhancing global policy and collaboration. There's a lot of big players that are cited here. And just before we get into the video, here's some of the ones you want to pay attention to. So for one, you do see Hugh Evans partnered with KPMG. Yeah, anyway. Only a few select people know where I'm talking about with that. Anyway, and then going further down, you also have Rebecca Clement from Lloyd's. And then you also have, for instance, Nayland Metlu, who's the global business manager of the Center of Carbon Transition, something we've been talking about a lot as well, carbon credits, all that, right? And sustainable solutions, but what? From JP Morgan. Okay, let's go ahead and play this. Please smash that like, especially if you understand how we tie all this in. I'm sure you're not at the point where you understand where we tie this in, but let this video give you a little intro, and then we'll definitely show you how we connect it all. Here we go.
This roadmap presents a vision for the next decade of UK financial and professional services to unlock the full potential of the economy and create a more prosperous Britain.
This vision represents what the City of London does best, which is to convene the industry, the financial and professional services industry, to come together as a UK jewel in the crown to provide solutions to our economic challenges.
We interviewed over 300 UK-wide organisations across different sectors, sizes, geographies, to make sure that this report was widely consultative and really embedded in that full breadth of knowledge and expertise across the UK and also internationally.
It would be helpful if we could work with government to understand what the priorities for the government are, and that would then enable us to coalesce funding alongside the government.
The government, the regulators and the market need to work more closely together than they have historically done in order to solve shared challenges and present the best possible face to international investors.
What's the potential we can unlock by bringing together data in ways that really serves customers and builds new economic opportunities?
A huge theme of the report is how do we innovate effectively and responsibly, leveraging the technology, the skills, the expertise that we have to deliver, and using the data in a responsible way.
As the UK considers a range of reforms to enhance the competitiveness of its capital markets, it's also crucially important to do that in lockstep with the policies that are required to seize the opportunity to anchor the country as a leader in sustainable finance.
In the UK, the investment gap is around £110 billion. It's a significant amount of money, but with that brings new jobs, new technology, innovation, and investment.
That expertise, not just in our industry, but in our regulators and in our government, enables us to operate as leaders, international links on financial services.
If we do nothing, we'll do okay. We might even do well, probably even quite well, but that's probably the limit. If we do something and we take charge, we take responsibility, and we make sure that all of the players are working as effectively as they possibly can, then we will do something extraordinary.
It's important that industries, government, and regulators work together now to build a strong economy for the future.
This is a fascinating time in the world economy, with huge changes in data and technology, huge risks in crypto crime and economic crime. We have to have a plan.
Ready to start eating healthier?
All right, so that gives you a little kind of a nice little intro to get you into this whole thing. We're going to pull up obviously a lot more we're going to get into here in just a bit. Just kind of pull up the branding back again because it looks kind of cool. And now we're going to take you to some of the notes. So for one, let's share this with you. And basically speaking, it goes on to mention this right here. And again, this is from the notes shared with Quant Papa. Following up on that point on Layer 1 blockchains, JP Morgan was one of the early backers of enterprise blockchain firm R3. Now, you guys know I did the whole thing recently in regards to R3 and XRP. And, you know, we've numerous times I've always talked about R3 Corda, and especially R3, that, you know, that XDC bridge, right? R3 Corda bridge, right? Everybody talks about that. Like, what content creator who talks about the ISOs doesn't talk about that, right? But now entered in this whole thing at JP Morgan and R3. So in 2017, it pulled out of pivoting towards building its own Ethereum-based permission DLT quorum, the premise, and look what's highlighted here, that underpins the RLN interoperability so that banks don't need to use the same type of blockchain to transfer tokens between them. But still, interoperability requires, of course, collaboration. It goes also to mention this whole thing about big risk to deposit tokens and regulated digital currency if banks get bogged down in regulatory arbitrage or don't collaborate sufficiently. There's this quote right here from ASA's was Ala Gax, kind of a weird name, but person from JP Morgan. Quote, "We are seeing a lot of innovation in silos." Again, recognize what? You know, the Gilbert Verdian reference. But I think the future digital money will be powered by what? Collaboration. Get a little bit into more of the notes. I want to draw this to your, draw it to your attention. Kind of in a rough day, to say the least. Sorry about that. So I want to share this with you. And on this, you will see, plain as day, DTCC's private permission DLT platform was developed in collaboration with many of the world's leading market participants and technology provider firms, including Apex Clearing Corp, Barclays, like we just showed you, hence why we showed you that. So thank you to Mike Cornwell, right? It's nice how we tie in that as well. BNY Mellon, Charles Schwab, Citadel Securities, Citi, hence yesterday's coverage. And please, if you like this coverage, you got to watch that video. It's chopped up for you for a reason, okay? Watch that at some point. That thing with Citi is huge, absolutely huge. And at the end of the video, it confirms, in my opinion, I mean, it literally, the writing's on the wall in the interview with CoinDesk in regards to Citi. You have Fidelity Investments, Finale. I did another deep dive about that in the past. Some of these videos don't get a lot of views, but it doesn't change the research at all. That's why we bring it to you. So Finale International, Goldman Sachs, of course, JP Morgan, right? Of course, there's some other ones here. Even Robinhood is listed here. Getting more into this, I want to share this with you as well. And on this one, I'm going to come out of the frame completely because I want the emphasis to be on this and not my mug. Here you go. A key design principle underlying SATP is the assumption that many blockchain systems in the future will be private permission closed in the sense that the ledger is accessible, as in, read and write, to authorized entities only. The notion of a closed blockchain system reflects not only on the current closed IT infrastructures that are found in most financial institutions, but it also reflects the basic human social behavior of trading within communities. For example, of this design principle, this can be found in the Project Ubin from the Monetary Authority of Singapore, aka MAS, and we covered this before. Let's share this real quick in regards to SATP gateways, because we do talk about SATP a lot, especially when it comes to quant. The draft version of SATP states that these temporary bridges established through SATP must contain 2 gateway applications, because you guys were saying, Max, can you talk more about quant gateways? This is technically old, guys. So again, this is probably about 5 years ago, but it reconfirms those gateways. And what's the origin? Well, the origin gateway and the destination gateway, these gateways are connected to one network each, the origin and destination DLT network respectively. Each gateway orchestrates the bridge on its side of the operation. A different organization can run each gateway, but due to the partial view constraint, they must trust each other. To establish and maintain trust, kind of like what Gilbert Verdian always talked about, gateways identify each other using public keys. The gateways sign all of the SATP standardized messages sent between them in order to prove their identity and validity of their messages. How is this done? Through what standard? The ISO TC 307 Gilbert Verdian Quant Network Standard. Now, getting into this part, look what's cited here. Choosing the right partner to move DeFi forward. Talks about finality. We obviously talked a lot about finality, but I want to reiterate this. I know I'm on the screen, but I want to show this because it's just a screenshot. It's kind of blurry. So why finality? Fully regulated financial market infrastructure within all active jurisdictions, fully backed with central bank money, providing those same risk benefits as using RTGS. How about this last part? Initial launch expected in UK GBP, as in British pounds, in 2023. Yes, 2023. We're still in 2023. Subject to regulatory approval, followed by support in the US and EU, respectively. Hence why we feel as though that the United States will show up to the big show, but they're the ones that'll show up last to the big show. What are some of the benefits of this? Peer-to-peer settlement and digital cash asset, interoperability of the network to enable near instant settlement cross borders, works with any legacy or DLT-based business applications. I mean, come on, guys. We've done your research with me for at least well over a year at this point, because actually more than that. We've been talking about quant for not quite a year and a half, but almost, okay? Finality Payment Services in action. They already have been able to show the potential and extent of possibilities which this technology will unlock beyond existing use cases, especially when it comes to the collaboration of global DeFi market innovators. Now, I'm going to come back into the frame on this one. I want to share this part with you because you may be wondering, do you have actually anything that links us to any of the things that were mentioned? Well, absolutely. Let's jump into that. So back on September 20th, which was not that long ago, right? Less than a month ago, Ledger Insights published this, and it got a little bit of attention, 16,000 views. But the bottom line is, it is public information, so I don't feel like I'm breaking any type of NDA that I didn't sign. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, and that is JP Morgan is a participant in the regulated liability network, and of course, it's a digital currency project. Citi, of course, like it says, founded the network, talking about payments, plumbing. Again, what he says to him, 85 to 90% of what we're talking about today probably won't exist in 5 years. This is a quote originally from Sibos. Here's the guy. Let's see if we can pull this up. And here is the reference. Back to Ledger Insights. Let's tie all this in. And getting into this, you will see, plain as day, JP Morgan is indeed part of regulated liability network digital currency project. Again, that gentleman you just saw right here. During Sibos, at that particular panel discussion, JP Morgan revealed it is participating in the RLN, and Gary Chan, the bank's global head of post-trade, believes digital currency will transform payments within 5 years. Now, earlier we talked about R3, did we not? Well, again, think about this for a second. Post-trade. So JP Morgan connection, R3, we even talking about Quant. So, wow. We talk about the UK, finance ministry and so on. We understand that the UK has literally initiated standards that were introduced from the likes of Gilbert Verdian and other key industry players. That is now the framework that's leading the charge of where we're going worldwide. But earlier then in September, the UK arm of Regulated Liability Network, RLN, shared the findings of its latest work without mentioning the participants. Yesterday's video, we gave you an example of a participant, and it was Citi. But as you can see, or maybe you haven't seen, again, watch the video. That CoinDesk interview, you have a particular lady from Citi who literally says Quant. Let it speak for itself if you don't believe it. You may still not believe it. But it goes on to mention that the network aims to protect, or I should say bring, banks and central banks to support different types of digital currency on the same network. Right. Think about that for a second. Getting more into this, it says it includes central bank digital currency, CBDCs, deposit tokens, regulated stable coins. But in July, the United States RLN published a report involving several other U.S. banks. And you're going to start seeing, as the months go by, more and more and more of these banks. The New York Federal Reserve's innovation arm, and of course, even MasterCard. And I'm going to show you something mentioned from Gilbert Verdian in regards to MasterCard. Now, what about the involvement of all this? Big banks, all of it. Sounds crazy, right? But it's notable for several reasons why we point this out. And that is, number one, firstly, JP Morgan has been what? At the forefront of bank exploration of digital currency, and it is involved in several other initiatives. And as you can see here, even a coin called JPM coin. I think it mentions also Parsher. Now I want to state this. This is where you have people like Jamie Dimon who will do what? Create fear for you in regards to your digital asset. And what is the one you hold? It's QNT. So if you paint the picture and create fear in the market, then what does it create in regards to him and his other Wall Street bigwigs? They will buy upon that fear. Max, you're full of crap. No, I'm not. Look more into it. We have seen numerous examples, hence why we share Whale Watcher and some of these other things with you guys. We're following what the big money has done, and the big money has shown time and time again that they want you to believe that they're not part of it. Well, here, finally, plain as day, right in front of your face, JP Morgan is part of it. So Jamie Dimon, let's just be honest, is an absolute liar completely. Here's the proof. Now, I know I got a little excited about that. But here, JPM coin, Parsher, and public blockchain deposit tokens. This sounds crazy, right? So it says, secondly, again, back to the Citi coverage from yesterday. Citi in itself initiated this whole thing that you do need to pay attention to, and that is they initiated the RLN network, and JP Morgan processes 10 trillion in payments daily. So for you guys who are like, no offense, I love you guys, okay? I appreciate you watching this show and so on, all right? And, you know, I get it where it's like, well, look at the market cap of this, look at the market cap of that. When I get statements like this, you know, I don't even know if this video will get a bunch of views. That's not the point. It's that you're paying attention to the good stuff. When I see this, JP Morgan processes 10 trillion in payments daily, not yearly, daily, then I don't have to be led to believe at all that we won't get to some of these crazy market caps for the particular assets that we own. Why? Because this is going to make it the biggest player in payments. This is where I said the whole thing of boy that mashed it, stick in and stew. Honestly, the proof is in the pudding. When you talk about the whole thing of being shaked out, freaking Jamie Dimon did that big time, big time. Now let's get back into the whole thing about JP Morgan's, or, you know, digital currency and motivations, regulation, right? There are two drivers behind JP Morgan's RLN involvement. One is to bring regulators up to speed, and the other is bank interoperability. Again, enter in the whole thing with Quant. If you still don't get it, you never will. I'm just going to be honest. Okay. Look at this quote. My primary goal inside the RLN process is how we begin to have regulators understand why we need this to move, to move forward with this, said JP Morgan's Gary Chan, again, the guy from the top picture. Quote, it's incumbent on us as industry leaders to guide them on that journey as well. He continued, quote, that benefits the client experience because that begins to move and accelerate the innovation that you can create in this space. The idea is really create innovation opportunity for us in the financial services market, as opposed to trying to innovate away and silo out. Again, the Gilbert Verdian reference. So when you hear this whole notion and this talk, and you've seen it a lot about, a fake out or a shakeout, and, you see cases of big money buying upon fear in the market. I'm always going to follow what the big money's doing. I'm not going to follow what some random person posted on Twitter who has like 10 followers and he just has an opinion. I mean, there's nothing wrong with opinions. We all have opinions, and this is just my opinion. And you may still think I'm full of crap, and I'm okay with that. I'm not going to get offended by that. But my thing is this. When you dig deeper into the likes of QNT, for instance, I think it's a big deal. And again, we're going to tie in more about this. We're not even done yet. But you want to know something? This might be one of the best broadcasts I've ever done to give you guys some of that juicy info of why you hold QNT. As the saying goes, it's not even covered enough, right? I don't even know if there's a lot of people that cover QNT on a live show on a regular basis. But you want to know something like crypto? Supply and demand. I want to meet that supply and I want to meet that demand. And there's a reason why Quant is tied with XRP as my number one. Maybe some people feel as though, well, after tonight, it's clearly not your number one, or, XRP is not your number one. Hey, I like being diversified. I like the, when I go to my cash register and doing the ka-ching, I like to have multiple cash registers doing the ka-ching, not just one cash register doing the one ka-ching. You get what I'm saying? You follow me? For international payments, the challenge is not just one set of regulators, or in this case, one set of what we're invested in, but country by country. Lloyd Banks' Peter Leff noted the involvement of the New York Federal Reserve's innovation arm, the United States RLN work. UK regulators have not participated in the British work so far, and brings us to this. And that basically is digital currency needs collaboration and needs that interoperability. So we're told one narrative that no, they're never going to work with the likes of like Quant Network and so on. Then you find another narrative under this, behind the curtain, if you will, that, yeah, it's been going on and it's been going on for a while. And I also want to state this real quick for the record. This whole notion that we're also always going to be led to believe that the United States is just never going to get with it. I think we're going to get surprised, and I think we're going to get surprised more than we've ever seen before. I think there's cooler heads that will prevail, but that's another story for another day. All right. JP Morgan's Chan also emphasized the necessity for collaboration. And here's the quote. If we bicker and argue about certain plumbing pieces, again, shout out to Crypto Smith, Sean was talking about the plumbing, if you will, we'll never get there. And to him, 85 to 90% of what we're talking about today probably won't exist in 5 years, and it's going to look much different. I think we mentioned that earlier. This quote also, once you accept that you can argue less about the philosophical facts of which layer one, or in this case, blockchain, and what they're using, and argue more about, around how you should argue more about how it comes together, right? That's the bottom line. Now, I want to share this real quick because we did talk about R3, and then we'll get to the next part about this. He states that following up the point on layer one blockchain, JP Morgan was one, listen to this part, because remember that Jamie Dimon narrative, what a liar this guy was. JP Morgan was one of the early backers of enterprise blockchain firm, of course, R3. And I guess it's me reiterating this, right? So I apologize for that. But the point is, just in case you missed that, it does underpin that the RLN is interoperable so that banks do not need to use the same type of blockchain to transfer tokens between them. But still, interoperability requires collaboration. Collaboration with who? I'm going to go with the one that really did some big deals and had literally the central bank of central banks, the Bank of International Settlements, Mr. Augustine Carstens, come out public and mention it. And then you have the other big wig from the Bank of England come out and literally say it and literally mention Gilbert Verdian verbatim. All right. Enough about this particular article. Let's jump into, again, some of the more juicier stuff. If quant's your thing, I'm telling you flat out, I think this might take the cake. So you have this, and it mentions about Sibos. So again, back to the guy you literally saw on the previous coverage that we had about a minute or two ago in the picture from Sibos. Remember him? Because it states basically his name is Gary Chan, and earlier, well, back in August, I guess you could say, the UK arm of regulated liability network RLN shared the findings of the latest work without mentioning the participants. The network aimed, of course, to bring together banks and central banks to support different types of digital currency on the same network. And of course, like it also says, it includes CBDCs, deposit tokens, and regulated stable coins. In July, a few months ago, last summer, the United States RLN published a report involving several other U.S. banks, including the New York Federal Reserve's innovation arm and, of course, MasterCard. Now, I want to show you guys this one more time. Here is from Gilbert Verdian, literally from Gilbert Verdian, I guess in regards to like Discord or something like that. And basically speaking, he saw this whole thing about people saying that, you know, Gilbert Verdian is the CEO and he was once with a Visa executive, but like he says, that's not true, you know. And actually, he's never been part of, he's never been a Visa executive, but what he has been is, like you see on the screen, he was a chief information security officer at VocalLink, right? And I did a whole thing about VocalLink, a deep dive on the old channel a long time ago. But like you said, MasterCard acquired VocalLink back in May 2017, and Gilbert Verdian, if you're wondering about this, where's that connection? Max, do it, man. Do it. Connect the dots. Do it. Yes. He was responsible for the security of all the payments in the United Kingdom for the Bank of England, hence why the Bank of England chose the Quant network. I mean, come on. Is it really that hard to understand? About $3 trillion worth. Number two, the London address, 2022 Wenlock Road, London, belongs to a company that allows you to register your London office, if somebody wants to nerd it out. But the key thing is his MasterCard connection. Getting more into this, let me share this with you as well. Let's jump back to Parshore. Now, we shared a little taste of this before. Do you guys like how I do that? Give you little crumbs and you want more, like Billy Mays. But wait, there's more. So introducing Parshore Intelligence, the trusted global network for value exchange. Remember how Gilbert Verdian is always talking about the internet of value or the internet of trust? You're going to see innovation, integrity, all this stuff, right? Getting more into it, faster, more secure cross-border value transfers, open industry platform developed to transform and accelerate interbank value movements in a digital era. Last I checked, and I don't have the quote, but they're literally almost that exact same quote on the Quant Network site. Now, what about this whole thing of Parshore? Well, their platform addresses speed, access, and transparency pain points. Their services include multi-currency clearing and settlement, FX payment versus payment, PVP, FX intraday swaps, delivery versus payment. Remember when I talked about FX intraday swaps? Remember I talked about institutional swaps? I don't know if you guys saw that video. It did get a lot of views. It's there for your reference if you want to look more into it. But what about the Parshore platform? Well, for one, their core technology includes DLT smart contracts and distributed applications. How are they able to get this all done? Well, they harness the key features of these technologies: programmability, immutability, and traceability. Again, everything literally mentioned word for word from the Quant Network site. Don't believe me? Look into it. They make digital clearing and settlement more efficient, reliable, and secure. Who do they work with? Well, we already gave you a little bit of a taste, but let's reiterate that. The commercial banks, the central banks, and even their infrastructure, value-added service partners, technology partners. They revolutionized global value exchange. But this key part gets my attention and should get your attention, especially if you're a QNT holder. They are global. They are independent. They are serving the world's leading financial institutions. I'm always following the big money through their blockchain-enabled platform. They have guided values, intelligence, and innovation, you name it. Here's some of their leaders. And we have seen this gentleman on the far left. We did share a few days ago, I believe, his particular interview and why that was such a big deal. Jason Thompson, he's the CEO of Parshore. I love this quote right here, right? This is from Piyusha Gupta, who is part of the DBS Bank, right? He's a chief executive officer, CEO. He says, by harnessing the benefits of blockchain and smart contracts tech, Parshore addresses current points of friction. Remember how many times that Crypto Lulu, Louis Jackson, would say that this has to be, frictionless. The open platform enables banks around the world to provide real-time cross-border, multi-currency payments, trade finance, foreign exchange. Again, think about trade finance. This is where R3 comes in the mix big time. Foreign exchange, DVP, securities, settlements, a world-class platform with programmability, immutability, again, back to the Quant reference, traceability built into its suite of services. Let me jump into this for a second. Excuse me. All right. Going more into this, that basically is this. Back in, what we talked about earlier before, just in case you missed the whole thing about Parshore, here's it up on your screen. Let's full screen this one. What does it say right there? The involvement with what? Big banks. It's notable. JP Morgan at the forefront. Bank exploration of digital currency. Involved in what? Several initiatives. JPM Coin and even Parshore. Hence why we highlighted Parshore. And again, back to the part where I was getting kind of excited. JP Morgan processes 10 trillion in payments daily, making it the biggest player in payments. And then go back to yesterday's video, or today's video, technically. Yesterday's live, today's chopped up. Citi initiated the RLN network. Again, if you just want the big wahoo moment, it's at the end. It's the CoinDesk interview. Jumping into this last part of what we have, I want to state this. So there's a few key things that, again, we're going to state in regards to the summary. And the way I look at it is this, in closing. I'm going to continuously pay attention to what is going on in regards to tokenized assets. We have JP Morgan, it's just not if, right? We do. They're going about moving 10 trillion daily. Well, when I want to pay attention to the one network that's going to allow that to happen, yeah, you better believe I'm going to pay attention to that. I, of course, would love to share more info with you, but I don't want to get in trouble in regards to what I did last time, because if anything, I do want to still be able to bring you live broadcasts. I want to thank Quant Papa, for bringing some of the information to us, but not to the point where I show you even more screenshots in regards to JP Morgan connection and so on. Maybe in the future we'll be able to share that with you. There'll be other parts we'll get into, but we'll continuously talk about this. Your key takeaway should be, again, this right quick, and that was the news that was released today. And I'll rewind it just in case you just tuned in. And it's this right here. Again, should be your takeaway. First mover America's JP Morgan goes live with first blockchain-based collateral settlement. Now, try to watch our show more continuously, and we'll show more as we're allowed to do so. That will conclude our quant coverage of the day. But again, your key takeaway should be the tokenization of these particular assets and what quant is really connected to. If you're lost in regards to all this, it's okay. I don't expect you to get it all on the first try. You can watch the coverage from yesterday, and especially the thumbnail that literally reads why quant now, basically, something like that. Let me double check what that says. I'm going to see what it says. I forgot what the thumbnail said. My bad. It states, yeah, now is the time. Here's why. Let me highlight this real quick. I'm going to share with you what I'm talking about. The video you want to watch to catch yourself up on it, or if you don't want to watch the whole video, you don't have to watch the whole thing. But there is a segment towards the end, and maybe I'll put some chapters in there later. It's the CoinDesk interview with a particular lady from Citi. If you've been following her coverage and how we connect the dots for over a year now, the answer is right there for you. All right. Now is the time. Here's why. Like it says, Citi. Key thing is RLN and JP Morgan. All of it coming together, especially when it comes to QNT. If you still are a doubter and said there's no proof about QNT and Citi, go to the Quant Network site. It's all there for you. If you're willing to take the deep dive, you don't want to take the deep dive, you just want to do it with me, hey, that's fine too. Okay, cool.